Hi, everybody. I'm Dave Gold, psychologist at Crossroads Psychological Associates, and I'm here with my business partner.
Matt Otto. I'm a counselor also at Crossroads. And today we were going to talk a little bit about anger response, and especially how there seems to be a lot more people getting angry right now, especially as we're stuck at home, um, stuck with our families, not able to get out and do some of the things we normally would do to get out some of that anger. Some of the statistics have been actually pretty staggering about increases in domestic violence right now, and some of the other really negative side effects of this quarantine. So it just brought us around to thinking about anger and how we respond to negative, what we see as negative emotions. And I know, Dave, you had something to say about that.
Right, you just used the term negative emotion, and I have to disagree that anger is a negative emotion. I don't know anyone, including shrinks, who can control what emotions we actually experience. None of us can control what emotions kind of well up inside of us. They're just normal, naturally occurring phenomena. And because we can't control them, I disagree with the idea that they're good or bad or right or wrong. They just are. We can't control what emotions we have, so I don't think they're bad. What we can do, what we can aim to do, is to control how we deal with these emotions, how we express the emotions. So the emotions are not good, bad, right, or wrong, but the behaviors associated with them can certainly be good, bad, right, or wrong.
Yeah, and anger is a really tricky one because it's such an intense emotion that we tend to be very reactionary when it comes to anger, rather than taking our time to process it and figure out what a good, healthy, appropriate response is, which is what leads to a lot of family arguments and disagreements that blow up and get out of control.
One of the things we talk a lot about with anger is, what kind of causes anger, what gets people angry. And one of the themes is, I know a lot of people, we tend to get angry when we feel threatened, whether it's physically or emotionally. When we don't feel safe, we kind of fall into fight or flight. And we tend to kind of, lash out in this kind of defensive posture. And that's where a lot of the anger comes out.
And I think right now we really undersell just how much of that fight or flight response we're having. We're 2 months into this quarantine, 2 months into being stuck at home. So in some ways, it's starting to feel more normal. And in some ways, we're trying to tell ourselves it should feel more normal, but it's not normal. And so we've almost shifted from this anxiety response to this anger response for a lot of people, where we're not truly angry. It's truly this fight or flight type of response, but we've gone from flight to fight.
Right. Well, we're feeling trapped and cornered. I mean, that's very specifically what we are. We're trapped, we're cornered, and it's starting to weigh on us, and we're starting to push against that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about other emotions as well, and anger kind of has a complicated relationship with other emotions.
It does, yeah. You mentioned as we were preparing for this that we have a colleague who, when we're in our consultation sessions and anger comes up, she always likes to point out what's the primary emotion, what's really leading to the anger. Because a lot of times anger doesn't come out of nowhere or just from the situation right to anger. A lot of times there's a middle step in between. Whether that's depression or anxiety or who knows what else. Right now, I think a lot of the anger is coming out of grieving. There's when we talk about grieving and death and loss, we talk about the different stages of grief, and one of those stages is anger.
Right, absolutely. I mean, feeling sad, depressed, helpless, powerless, trapped, those feelings don't feel good. Those are the ones that really weigh on us. And sometimes anger can almost be defensive against those feelings. In addition to everything else, anger is strength. Anger is assertiveness. Anger is power. Anger is just get out of my way. And in a lot of ways, subjectively, that can just feel better. That can feel preferable to sadness and helplessness. So sometimes anger comes in almost as a defense against some of those other feelings.
Hmm. Hmm. Right. Especially we see that with younger kids, right? Where a lot of times you have kids who are having anger outbursts, and it's actually not anger at all. It's depression, because like you said, being angry and lashing out feels a lot better, feels a lot more comfortable than being sad and depressed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the other things about anger, we keep talking, but we're kind of talking metaphorically about letting it out. And letting anger out is important. Um, and if we see anger as it's okay, it's not a bad thing, it's a lot easier to let it out.
Mhm.
If you look at anger as bad, if the idea is you shouldn't be angry, it's bad to be angry, well, one of the unintended consequences is we kind of hold it inside and let it build up.
Right. Right. So, and in those cases, it can almost be the opposite, where the anger turns into depression,
Yeah.
right? Because that's one of the ways of conceptualizing depression, is that it's this anger turned inwards. We don't feel comfortable being mad, and we don't feel comfortable letting it out in physical ways or other healthy ways. And so we just hold it all in, turn it in on ourselves, and fall apart emotionally.
It can come out, it can turn into depression. You're absolutely right. It can build up and come out explosively.
Hmm.
It's the difference between, hey, you said something and I'm a little frustrated, I'm kind of angry about that, let's talk about it, as opposed to builds up, you say something and I just explode at you.
Hmm.
You mentioned getting it out. What are some good ways to get it out?
So I love physical ways of getting it out. I think exercise, um, running, especially cardiovascular types of exercises that really help us burn off some of that anxiety, can be a really good thing. But anaerobic exercises can be really good too. Lifting weights can be a great way to do it. Some kids, especially, just need a physical outlet for it. So having a punching bag, or having a place where they can throw a ball at a wall or at a rebounder, something like that, can be a really, really great way to physically get out that anger.
Absolutely. Sweat is wonderful for getting out anger. Um, Talking certainly works. Sometimes writing things down. Another one I like is music, whether it's
Music.
playing music
Mhm.
or listening to music. Listening to loud, angry music sometimes can really be cathartic. It can be a release of anger. It doesn't necessarily ramp people up.
Mhm. Mhm. But likewise, the others, for some people, it's better to listen to calming, relaxing music, and just a way to kind of more slowly diffuse out that anger.
Right? It's whatever's going to be a good fit for a given person at a given time.
Mhm.
Although I've certainly found whenever I try to make music, that usually gets the people around me angry.
Yes, I would agree with that. But it's also good not to judge the way other people get out their anger, right? That I work, especially in working with parents, they might see, like punching bag, for example. Punching bag for some people is a great way to get out anger, and it typically does not translate to them being physically violent. In fact, for the vast majority of people, it's exactly the opposite, right? It keeps them from being from physically lashing out. So having a punching bag can be a great way to get that out. And I know some parents who go, "Well, we don't want to do anything that even kind of remotely looks like violence." Yeah, so being careful not to judge the way other people get out their anger too. Same with like the differences in music, right? That some parents go, "Oh, well, we want to listen to calming, relaxing music. We don't want them listening to this angry, loud music." Okay, well, if it's annoying the rest of the family and you want to tell them to do it with headphones on, that's fine. But some kids just need to get it out in that way. Some adults, some other people need to get it out in that way, and that's okay.
Very well said. Very well said. In some ways, this comes down to this idea of a lot of us are sometimes afraid of anger.
Mhm.
And if we're afraid of it, that just leads to it building up, not releasing it, not letting it out, and going in the direction that you just said.
Right.
Some of the patterns here with the current pandemic, with the shelter in place orders, is frustration and anger is it's kind of coming out in some very specific ways, and this is getting in the way of us dealing with certain types of anger.
Mhm. Yeah, and like I said earlier, it's really distinctly linked with grief, and a lot of what we're experiencing right now is grief. We're missing people, we're missing events, we're missing special things that we were really looking forward to, and there's a real sense of loss in our society in general that we're struggling with.
There's a sense of loss, and also this time of year, especially graduation time, and even weddings and other kind of rites of passage. In effect, these are ways that we go through our lives, and in good, healthy, positive ways, we separate from others. We assert our independence. We kind of spread our wings and move out into the world a little bit. These are all healthy developments, and the current state of affairs is really getting in the way of that. And that causes a lot of frustration.
Yeah, it does, and that's perfectly natural. And again, trying to give people space and permission to have their grief and their anger about that is okay and healthy and should be encouraged.
I think that's one of the things that we're going to talk about in probably our next video is going to be kind of this separating out and dealing with the anger associated with us being cooped together and not being able to do that.
Yeah, because like you said, there's a lot of things that we're missing, and we'll talk more about specifically what some of those things we've been missing are, and other ways that you might start to replace um, some of those rites of passage, as you talked about, with some other things that they're not going to be the same. They're not going to be exactly what we hoped, but hopefully they can help ease it a little bit. The other thing that we're going to try and do is set up some webinars here over the next few weeks to talk to help parents in particular more specifically try to figure out what works for their family. So we'll have lots of question and answer seminar periods too with a few of our clinicians to talk about those sorts of things. Summer is another really good example. Summer we're used to sending our kids to camps and swim teams and sport camps and leagues and everything else, and most of that is on hold, if not totally canceled at this point. So I know a lot of parents who are really struggling, going, "What am I going to do this summer?" Having school, even though it hasn't been the same and has been difficult, and there has been some sadness and anxiety and frustration with online schooling, at least it's been something.
Right.
And so I know a lot of parents who are struggling with, what am I going to do when there's nothing for 8 to 10 weeks? So we'll talk through some of that in our upcoming webinars too. So please keep an eye on our website, Facebook page, and YouTube, because we will post more specific dates and topics as soon as we have them.
We'll be back soon. Everyone stay safe.
Thanks for listening.
Take care.